Back when the muscle car was born, the name of the game was run what you brung and hope you brung enough. The door was wide open for manufacturers to do just about anything they wanted to make a car go faster. But in the early 70s, high performance gave way to the need for lower exhaust emissions. Getting these mega-powered engines to meet federal emission standards was difficult and expensive. So most automakers just stopped making fast cars. Even aftermarket hot rod parts had to be certified emissions-friendly. This was the new reality, and it brought with it the end of America's first muscle car era. That's the way things were for nearly 20 years, until a company called SLP Engineering reinvented the process of making horsepower. SLP stands for Street Legal Performance, and putting muscle back into GM's cars was their objective. But in this new high-tech world, this required a high-tech solution. Fortunately for muscle car fans, SLP is all about high-tech solutions.
There are always people who want more. I mean, that's pretty much the American way. And SLP stepped up just like the early guys did, Berger, Yinko, and all those guys. SLP is really the new tradition of aftermarket performance.
SLP Engineering launched into the high-performance arena in the mid-'80s with a new design induction and exhaust system for the General Motors 305 cubic inch small block engine. Made especially for the Firebird and Camaro, these street-legal bolt-on parts increased the 305's horsepower and torque by over 10%. This was the first ray of high-performance sunshine for F-body owners since the glory days of the early 70s. Most importantly, SLP's close relationship with General Motors took much of the guesswork out of building a faster Firebird. SLP parts were available through GM service departments. They could be dealer installed, and the cost of the modifications could even be financed in with the cost of the car purchase. In this new high-tech world, this was the way to go hot rodding.
One of the scary things about fuel injection and computer control is the average enthusiast thought that they couldn't modify them at all. The engines respond to the same things that the early engines do. You just have to go about it in a slightly different way. SLP showed everyone it could be done.
Today, SLP has evolved into a supercar builder, making turnkey hot rods for people who want that old muscle car punch to go along with the looks and the handling of today's cars. In their new high-tech manufacturing facilities, Camaros become SLP Camaro Supersports, and Firebirds become SLP Firehawks, in a process that upgrades every part of the car.
What we're trying to do is provide high performance, reliability, unique styling, performance, and handling that the average enthusiast can afford.
Along with the drivetrain and suspension enhancements, aerodynamic body parts and free-flowing intake and exhaust complete the SLP treatment, turning GM's hot F-body cars into thrill machines that actually outperform the legendary 60s muscle cars. In addition to the Camaro SS and the Firehawk, SLP creates special versions of the Pontiac Grand Prix, a V6-powered Camaro RS, and 2 sport trucks based on the GMC Express and the Chevy Seeker. To those who said you couldn't get performance out of emissions-legal engines, the cars from SLP are a revelation. And for those who never experienced a real 60s ground pounder, these new Millennium muscle cars are a chance to have the kind of horsepower under their foot they'd only heard about in bench racing sessions. All of this happened, and is happening today, because a group of people, led by an old hot rodder named Ed Hamburger, believed the muscle car era wasn't dead.
Ed's got a long tradition of motorsports. He was a racer back in the 60s, 70s. In the late 80s, Ed had some ideas about what to do to provide a little bit more performance and actually better fuel economy and lower emissions. In 1987, he formed SLP Engineering. And the whole goal behind SLP Engineering was to provide emissions-legal products that added performance and also had the level of durability that the OE would respect.
When we return, we'll show you how SLP brought back the muscle car on the American muscle car. The third-generation Camaro and Firebird were long-awaited technological breakthrough cars. After several years of engines strangled by emissions controls, the new technology of computer-controlled tune-port fuel injection was breathing new life into these power plants.
It really turned the corner when they started using electronic fuel injection. In 1985, GM introduced the tune-port induction engine. That was really a big step forward as far as performance is concerned. They'd finally learned how to balance performance with emissions. As a side benefit, drivability was improved, cold starting was improved. Really, electronic fuel injection and computer controls have transformed the internal combustion engine.
TPI engines were tuned for maximum torque and horsepower at lower RPMs. This made for fun launches and good stoplight to stoplight performance, but they ran out of breath at about 4,500 RPM. A supercar needed an engine that would pull hard to around 6 grand. This is where the SLP engineers started work.
Now SLP stepped in and they said, well, you know, it's a good engine, stoplight to stoplight. You put it on a drag strip, you put it on a road course, and it really struggles up top. What can we do to make the engine perform better all through the rev range? So SLP came out with new runners, came out with exhaust systems, camshaft design, things like that that really made the TPI engine a lot happier throughout the rev range.
Not all of the 305's performance improvements came from the good old days, though. A major part of SLP's tweaking was pure 21st century computer magic. SLP was one of the first companies to analyze their modifications for maximum engine performance in every gear. These new parts, along with a free-flowing 3-inch exhaust system and a new cold air intake system, which improved airflow to the engine as much as 30%, immediately upped the 305's output by 50 horsepower. Best of all, where the stock TPI motors fell off at 4,500, SLP modified engines pulled strongly all the way to the red line. SLP performance packages were available as dealer-installed options on new Firebirds or over-the-counter from GM Service Parts System.
When you can get a relationship with someone like an SLP and you can utilize their engineers and then have our engineers verify the data and share with them what we know about the car, that's when you get some really incredible things done.
With GM's stamp of approval, SLP's parts were politically correct in every sense of the word. They worked with and not against the car's pollution control equipment. They made GM's tuned port engines more efficient. And efficiency means more power. And SLP equipment didn't even void the car's warranty.
For many years in the aftermarket, parts were stamped for off-highway use only, and that was kind of a wink-wink. The person bought the parts and he knew what he was doing, but if the parts broke or if they caused, more importantly, some other parts in the drive line in front of it or behind it to break, you were on your own. And Ed Hemberger, our owner and founder, to his credit, as a business strategy said, our parts are going to be street legal and they're going to be emissions compliant and they're going to provide better performance.
SLP had the new smog-legal engines scienced out and was now among the forefront of speed equipment manufacturers. But by the early 90s, America's automakers were back to their old high-performance fun and games. Detroit technology had caught up with the rest of the world, and the new fun machines from General Motors were starting to have that old muscle car feel. Even the #1 litmus test for muscle cars, straight-line acceleration, was coming back. Muscle car fans from the good old days and a whole new crop of high-tech road warriors were taking American iron back to the streets again. For SLP's engineers, these new cars were a great place to start making their kind of horsepower. But once again, SLP had a bigger vision. They wanted to build a car that would offer all-world performance at a reasonable cost. Stay with us as SLP gets radical with a new car called the Firehawk when the American muscle car returns. The ZR1 Corvette had been Detroit's cutting-edge car since it first rolled out in 1990. Its double overhead cam, 4-valve per cylinder aluminum block 350 was the be-all and end-all in American performance. This engine cranked out 375 horsepower in street trim, and the Vet's handling was race-ready. Duplicating the performance of the ZR1 in an automobile costing half as much would be a nice trick if they could pull it off. But SLP's high-tech hot rodders were up to the task. As a baseline for their modifications, they chose the 1992 Firebird. This car already offered blurred vision handling and bonsai straight-line acceleration. But when it rolled out as the new SLP Firehawk, it was a steel-bodied Corvette.
Those cars were very special. They were built really for showroom stock racing. They had highly modified L98 TPI engines that made 350 horsepower. You could get them with competition Brembo brakes. You could get them with roll bars, no back seat, a ton of chassis modifications. That was really the most hard-edged F-body you've ever been able to buy. It was reflected in the price, of course, but if you look back in the history of F-body performance, the 92 Firehawk has to be at the top.
To create the Firehawk, the Firebird's factory drivetrain was removed, and in its place went a special high-strength 4-bolt main 5.7-liter block, a forged crank, the hypo pink rods and LT1 pistons, and a custom-ground SLP roller cam. On top of the short block, SLP added a set of ported cylinder heads with 2-inch intake and 1.56-inch exhaust valves. A special T-Ram port injection intake manifold with tuned intake runners and a larger throttle body fed the charge into the cylinders, and a set of stainless steel headers fed the big SLP exhaust system. This engine made 350 horsepower at 5,500 RPM and 390 foot-pounds of torque at 4,400, and would pull strongly all the way to the 6,000 RPM red line. Getting all this new power to the ground required another upgrade. The ZF 6-speed gearbox from the Corvette, a Dana 44 rear end with 354 gears, and Ronal wheels with P275 40 ZR17 rubber made sure this car would hook up on the launch and stick in the turns. All this performance came with a hefty price tag, though, nearly $40,000. The Formula Firebird's base price was around $19,000, and the Firehawk conversion ran it up another $20,000, pricing it out of the range of most Firebird buyers. This first Firehawk was exactly what SLP had promised, a car that offered Corvette-style performance costing thousands of dollars less. But even though the 92 Firehawk was a technological breakthrough and an awesome first effort, unfortunately, the marketplace wasn't ready for a $40,000 Formula Firebird, no matter how quick it was. As a result, only 25 92 Firehawks were ever built. But SLP's original concept of all-world muscle at showroom prices was still a good one. It just needed a little help from General Motors. That help came in the form of the 1993 Firebird. The fourth-generation F-bodies were beautifully styled. And more importantly, Pontiac now offered the car with an LT1 engine and a 6-speed transmission. This meant SLP didn't have to replace the entire drivetrain, so the cost to convert a Firebird into a Firehawk headed south in a hurry. This was the big bang for the buck SLP had been looking for. Stay with us as street-legal performance comes to the people when the American muscle car continues. SLP had graduated from making a conversion package for the Firebird to, in essence, making a street-legal race car in just a few years. But their original vision of making a car that outperformed the 60s muscle cars in every way without costing an arm and a leg was still out there. But finally, the prize was in sight, thanks to the fourth-generation Firebirds and Camaros.
In '93, with the all-new body style, GM had raised the bar to 275 horsepower in a base V8 Firebird. So by adding a Ram air package to it, we got it up to the magic number, 300 horsepower.
Building around the 275 horsepower LT1 and a 6-speed transmission, SLP replaced the stock Formula hood with a new unit made of composite material, featuring a cold air induction system which upped the horsepower to 300. 17-inch wheels and ZR-rated rubber were part of the standard package, as was a new rear spoiler, the Firehawk graphic treatment, and megaphone-style tailpipes. This basic Firehawk conversion added a much more reasonable $59.95 to the Firebird's base price. Having learned a lesson with their first cars, SLP now created a new way of buying the Firehawk. Instead of offering a one-price hot rod with all the bells and whistles like they did in 1992, now you could order from an a la carte menu of performance options according to your go-fast desires and your budget. Going down the menu, a performance exhaust system was available for $9.95, which was good for an additional 15 horsepower. And to go with your upgraded tires and wheels, you could order the full-on suspension package for another $14.95. As a final touch, a few dress-up and convenience items were also available, which added a touch of specialness to a car that everyone knew was going to be a collector item. SLP's a la carte plan worked. 201 Firehawks sold in 1993, 500 were sold in 1994, and 671 hit the streets in 1995, including 102 convertibles. Performance from this new Firehawk was right in line with the muscle cars of the 60s. 13-second quarter miles and a top speed of almost 150 miles per hour meant Firehawk owners didn't have to back down from anything on the street, no matter how big and bad or nostalgic it was. Finally, the SLP mission had been fulfilled. They had created a car with bonsai acceleration that went around corners with the best of the world's sports cars for a few bucks more than a showroom Firebird, and it was street legal in all 50 states. Now that their vision had been achieved, the SLP team set about widening their lineup. In mid-1995, SLP created the Comp TA, a special car based on the Trans Am, and made to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the BF Goodrich TA radial tire. After their success with Pontiac, in 1996, SLP introduced the Super Sport Camaro. With its retro hood scoop and hugger orange paint scheme, it was a throwback to the legendary SS396 cars of the 60s, with enough punch to make you think there was a good old big block rat motor under the hood.
Because of SLP, we were able to take their engineering expertise, take a Z28, and bump the horsepower on that LT1 engine to come out with this great car in 1996 called the Camaro SS, which really brought us right back to the first generation car, the muscle cars of past.
By now, the trust level between GM and SLP was so well established that SLP was given the task of building Pontiac's 1996 and 1997 Ram Air Trans Ams. This is big-time stuff for a company that started out tuning up GM's F-bodies. But when you're good, you're good. And on the horizon were even more supercars, made for a more diverse audience. We'll tell you all about it when the American Muscle Car returns. After the Firehawk success, SLP set their sights on the sport sedan and sport truck markets with the Grand Prix GTX and the Seeker and Express sport trucks. But by far, the big news was the massive popularity of the Super Sport Camaro. There was a risk in resurrecting one of the most beloved names in muscle car history. SLP knew that anything named Super Sport would have a lot to live up to. Their version of the SS Camaro met this challenge head-on.
The SS has always been the ultimate in terms of horsepower. One of the beauties of the Camaro SS is, let's face it, it is performance American style. And what do I mean by that? I mean, it's got a muscular V8 engine, it's got rear-wheel drive, solid axle. It's what we've always known as the American performance muscle car. We're today building the fastest Camaros and the most powerful Camaros we've ever built. And you can run the air conditioner while you're doing it.
For 2001, there's a V6 revolution going on with a high-po version of an old favorite, the Rally Sport Camaro. All the go-fast tricks learned from the Super Sport were folded into this car, along with some special tuning to create a nimble V6-powered street machine that beats V8 cars' insurance premiums by a mile. 2001 is a banner year for SLP. It marks the Firehawk's 10th anniversary. To commemorate this, SLP has created a limited edition Firehawk. This black and gold beauty features gold wheels and special 10th anniversary badging. Under the hood is the 335 horsepower LS1 engine. Only 1,000 of these Firehawks will be built, making them very special indeed.
10th anniversary Firehawk, I'm very, very excited about. Number one, it's the longest running niche vehicle in the history of General Motors. When you think about all the great products that GM's built over the years, SLP's Firehawk has been on the scene the longest.
Today's Firehawks and SS Camaros are created in SLP's new facility, located 20 minutes away from GM's F-body assembly lines. Under one roof, SLP's 250 car builders handle the complete transformation from great car to supercar. Stock rear axles are changed to high-strength Auburn units. Shocks, springs, and sway bars are upgraded, and bigger brakes are installed. SLP's own designed fiberglass hood, with its more efficient horsepower-making airbox and heat extractors, is manufactured on-site and taken straight from finishing to installation. This step ensures the highest quality control for these parts. 17x9 wheels and Firestone P275/40/17 ZR tires are mated perfectly to the car's needs and capabilities. And each car gets its own special cosmetic treatment as a warning that this car packs a little more heat than ordinary Camaros and Firebirds. This heat comes from the latest version of America's favorite engine, the 350 cubic inch LS1 small block.
When the LS1 V8 debuted in the F-car in 1998, a lot of people questioned the wisdom of putting a pushrod 2-valve engine in a modern car. But I'll tell you what, those guys really knew what they were doing. You don't get the flat, broad torque curve of the V8 with an overhead cam engine. It may be traditional architecture, but believe me, it's a state-of-the-art power plant.
The 327 horsepower LS1 engine provides low 13-second quarter-mile times, and the car corners like a slot car. The bark from the catback exhaust system is guaranteed 60s cool, and the SLP graphics are genuine traffic stoppers. Firehawks and SS Camaros are extremely low production automobiles, and they've already generated enough excitement from car collectors to make them overnight classics. But these are cars that are meant to be driven, and driven hard. And that's how a car gets to be a classic. SLP has done all this their way, using the highest tech methods to achieve the same old result. Kick-in-the-pants performance in a car that's drop-dead gorgeous for a price everyone can afford. Hey, isn't that the same way the muscle car thing started? Thanks for watching. And please remember, don't crush them, restore them.